and this is the API training class. So just do a recap of what we did last week. We talked about some of the basics of an API. And we said that an API is made up of a set of REST requests or requests. And within the request, we have the following parts. We have the HTTP, we have the URI or URL, which is the uniform resource locator or uniform resource identifier. We have the headers, we have the bodies. And we spoke about the API verbs, the CRUD verbs: create, read, update, and delete. So this is we spoke about the get, the post, the put, the patch, and the deletes. And I expected that you guys would have gone ahead over the week to get more information on what these are. And thereafter we spoke about So thereafter we looked at an example of a RESTful API. What makes up a RESTful API? We spoke about the protocol, the protocol which exposes the resource or the link or the URL to the internet, which is the HTTPS or HTTP. We spoke about the path, which is exactly your domain. To be honest, for people that are conversant with URLs, which is the domain, and then after your domain, you have your endpoint or resource path. So today we'll be talking about resources, and I'll be breaking it down for you to understand what a resource path is. And then we spoke about, I explained if you have to query specific things within a particular endpoint, how you go about it and all that. So this is, we spoke about the query key using the question mark key, where the value and, you can, keep on adding several other values, like concatenation, adding several key and values to be able to retrieve the object within the resource or the endpoint. So today, basically, I'll be talking about, so we'll be doing two things this evening. We'll be looking at what a resource is. And then from there, we'll be looking at, I'll try and explain to you JSON objects, the concept of JSON object, because there's need for you to understand what comprises of a JSON object and what it should look like. And then we'll be going into Postman quickly, just do an introduction to Postman, the kind of things you can do on Postman, and we'll finish up on that. So what is a resource? So I've been talking about API. I've been talking about the server, and I've been talking about the client. So the client is, the front end, or let's say the client is you are requesting information from the server, or the client is your ATM, or the client is your internet URL, maybe like TripAdvisor, or your internet, or client is BBC website that is asking information for or weather for different location from a web service, which is a server. Let's take it that way, as simple as that. Now, what is a resource? So we're talking about retrieving information, making a request, and returning this back, right? Now, a resource is any information that you can name. So a resource could be a document. We've spoken about, a resource could be your bank accounts. Your resource could be whether in a particular location. Resource could be any representation of any object. You could, for instance, if you log on to Netflix now, you are trying to, you are looking for information, you are looking for movie or TV shows and all that. That is a resource. So you can have a single resource, you can have a collection of resources, right? So that is basically what a resource is. So when we talk about API, when we say we make a GET request, we are asking for information about something, and that something is called a resource. So they are stored in, for instance, they might be stored in the database. The resource could be a logic. So you might be getting information about weather from New York, and then also being able to do some computation aside. So for instance, if you get weather in New York, you can also write, it's okay, can you get me the distance, the weather between January and sorry, between March and April? You want to know the average temperature and all that. So despite the fact that you're looking at one resource to get all the weather in New York, there is also another API, that is doing some computation as well to be able to give you an average of weather in New York over the next couple of months. So these are things that you can, these are requests that can be made and all that. So the kind of resources you would typically encounter are representation of objects. Sorry, for instance, if you go to a pizza shop, you want to buy a pizza, you need to give them your information, you need to give them your order, or for instance, if you're in your school, you can for instance, if you go to a school, they want to, the lecturer wants to, okay, look at the grades of students, or they want to deliberate on how well they've done. They can request that information from somewhere, grades of students. So that is a resource. So where that information sits is a resource. That particular information is a resource, right? Or you can say it's a collection of resources. I hope that is clear. So, and I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me? If you can hear me, just let us know. Can someone type in the chat if you can hear me? Hello? All right, cool. Thank you. All right. So I talked about, so going about with in continuation of what a resource is, right? So if you look at this chart that's on the screen, right, you see that this is a pizza shop, right? Now you want to make in a pizza shop, right? They are taking orders for customer names. So you want to make an order, you provide your name, you provide your address, you provide your payments, and then you get an order number, right? And then so these are particular resources, right? So for the front end of the pizza shop, right? If they are if the back, let's say the chef is like, okay, let me understand what I need to prepare tonight, right? Here, I'm just breaking it down for you. So let's say the front. So in these two scenarios, all right, we can interchange them, because one, we are looking at the front of the office, which is like the client side. So, and this menu side is like the server. So this probably, let's say this is the client side, and this is the server, this is providing information. So when a customer comes into the shop, the customer is asking, okay, what is on the menu for my pizza tonight? So for it, so there's an API call that will go back to the menu resource, bring out the list of menus. Okay, we have margarita, we have blah 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 and blah, yeah. And then this is another resource that contains all the crust size. We have medium, large, extra large, over large, and all that. And these are the toppings, pepperoni and all that toppings, and the sauce and garlic and all that. So inside these different little boxes are the resources, right? So for instance, you might have like 10 varieties of pizza. That's a resource. You might have 5 different sizes, or 10 or 15 or 20 different sizes. That's a resource. Toppings might have as much as you want in your shop. That's a resource. Sauce, that's a resource. So looking at all this information, right, yeah, we can have APIs that call these resources and then provides whoever needs them, that particular information. So information is sitting, we have information sitting in each of these resources, right? And then we can call them using an API to retrieve values from them, and then based on that values, we can then work on it or use it for what we want it for. So for instance, now, let's say I can say, okay, give me the order. All right, so for instance, oh, sorry, I've gone back to my previous slide. Oh, this is what, sorry, I don't like using this presentation stuff, because you can't actually, so this is, Okay. All right. So, all right. So for instance, now we can make, so let's say this is meterpizza.com. Yeah, right. We can say, all right, if you want to look at the path for order, we can say, okay, mrpizza.com/order slash orders, right? Let's say this is orders, right? So when I call that particular endpoint or resource, I am getting all the orders for that particular for that particular website, mrpizza.com, right? Now, if I call this path, I am getting everything in terms of customer names. It will give me a list of all the customers. And if I look at this one, right, address, I get all the list of addresses. And if I look at the payments, say, let's say I want to say, okay, it shows you all the payments at that particular instance. So with this kind of scenario, we can then also go into like more like, okay, if I want to get a cost, I go to mrpizza.com/customer name. So let's say I put, mrpizza.com/John. I get that customer name, and it will give me all the customer name, all the orders from John, anybody called John. And if I now want to narrow it down to a particular person or particular address, I can say, okay, slash address. Let's say the address is 1234 Bingo Road. It gives me, okay, it narrows it down to that John living in Bingo Road. Or if I say mrpizza.com/customer name/order, then /order number. Maybe I provide order number 123, then it gives me that particular resource for that customer name and that particular order number. So basically, I hope this has given you enough information as to what we call a resource. And basically, that is what an endpoint is. And that is how we do forms of API testing, by calling resources and getting information and making requests to that particular resource, and then retrieving values and responses back. Now, going from what we've talked about earlier, so we need to find resources. How do we find resources? Each of these needs to have each resources needs to have a resource identifier. So resources are identified by their URLs. You can see that you have been talking about URLs from last week, and it's so important that we understand what they are. So in this particular example, we say this particular airport gap blah blah blah.com/API/airports. So if you query this particular endpoint, it returns you a list of all the airports. So I'll just show you that quickly. Let me just show you that. You know what? Right. Okay. Okay. I'll come back to that in a minute. Let me just quickly explain this. So this particular endpoint, so this is the endpoint. API/airport is the endpoint, and this is the domain name, or the server path, or whatever you want to call it, right? So this is the URL or the URI, and this particular /airport is the endpoint. So if you are calling the endpoint airport endpoints, we are returning the list of all the airports. Now, if you want to narrow it down to a single airport, you provide the airport code. So this particular API has been configured to take a value, an ID. So if you add /airport ID, it returns a single airport. Now, if you now want to go into much more details, right? If you want to say, okay, give me all the airports in Canada with this particular reference, it returns you an airport with that particular reference. So in testing API, you need to understand, okay, what can this API actually do? What can I query on this API? Or which kind of requests can I make on this API? If I go with this particular path, will it give me everything? If I narrow it down to a specific value, will it return that specific value? Or if I start adding different combination of queries, what do I get in return? So that's part. So this is another way to help you understand how you would find a resource, what a resource is, and how to and give you an understanding of what a resource is. So basically, within an API, we're looking at different resources, and that is what they call endpoints. So an endpoint, as the name implies, endpoint is where a resource sits. And a resource could be anything. It could be a document, it could be a list of items, it could be anything. It could be, information about something. It could also be a computation. So you can be calling a resource to do something for you, in conjunction with another resource from another API, using an input from another API to perform that particular logic. So, well, I'm trying to look for something. I hope I haven't. There's something else I want to talk about quickly. Hold on. So has anyone got any question from what we talked about? Okay, I'm going to just share that. I think I haven't updated my slide, so I'm going to have to share another slide. Okay. All right. So the next thing we'll be talking about is so the next thing we'll be talking about is JSON. So last week, I think I showed you what JSON is last week, and I would show you. Okay, so I think from the examples of what we spoke about in the last 2 weeks. Hold on 1 second. I need to show you something. We've been talking about JSON and what JSON objects are. So we'll continue on that today. So if I go here, bear me a moment. Okay. All right. Okay. So, we spoke about, we were looking at responses last week, and I talked about JSON object. I talked about XML and all that. So, but today I really want to dive into JSON and let us understand what the structure is and all that. So I'll be talking about that in the next couple of, I'll just share my old desktop to be honest. It makes it easy for me to flip around things. All right, so if you look at what is a JSON object, so a JSON object is made up of values, key value pairs. So if you look at this particular, diagram, right? So the first name, so JSON object starts with curly brackets. So if you see this where my cursor is, right? You see this curly brackets, right? This is the opening point for the JSON object, right? And then it has a closing one at the bottom here. So the reason why I'm explaining this is because when we send requests, for instance, when we are, for instance, on this one, right? Let's go to a simpler one. I don't know whether you can see my screen. Let me make it a bit bigger. All right. So if you look at this, right, we are asking for a single user. So if you look at this API path, right, we are going into the path, into a resource of all the users, right? And we are saying, all right, Mr. API, give me users with ID number 2. All right. Now the response comes back as a 200. Last week we spoke about the responses. We said 200 is a success. So if you see a 200, that means everything is fine. And then if you look at the response structure, right, it is inside, it is a JSON object. So JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation, right? And it is a programming language that is used for development of APIs, and it is used for development of API responses, and also it is used for development of websites, and even for, and it is also used for, it is agnostic in the sense that it is compatible with many programming languages. You can use it in Java, C#, C#+, and all that. And nowadays, most websites are developed using JavaScript. and JavaScript makes use of JSON objects and all that. So basically, if you look at this, right, this is the same thing I was showing you on that diagram. This is the opening bracket, and this is the closing, the opening brace and the curly brace and the closing brace, right? What I'll say is you need to go and read about JSON. Just have a like an overview of what JSON is, just not something deep, but what JSON is, so that and all that. So just like an explanation, like a definition of what it is. So if you look at this, right, we have a data object, right? Within this data object, we have this key and this value. So this is a data object. We are saying that within the data object, we have this key value. So you'll see that this ID has a value of an integer. Yeah, so an integer is a number, right? So you can see that this email has a value of this, whatever it is called, Janet blah, 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 and it is inside a quote. Yeah. Now, the reason why this is inside the quotes is because this is the ID is an integer, is a number, and this is a string. So strings are always, closed by in JSON objects. Strings are always opening and closed. They are in between two open and closed quotes and all that. So, and if you look at the third line, right, this is saying first. So if you also see something between, so what separates the key and the value is this colon, right? This colon separates this key and value. So you find, so that's how the structure of a JSON is, right? So this value, so this represents, okay, this is ascribing the value to this ID, and then this is ascribing the value, this email address, this value of Janet's blah 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 to this email address. So basically, what it's saying is that this particular email address has a value of this. This particular ID has a value of this, and you see that there is also a comma separating these the first object from the second object. And then the third object, first name, Janet, last name, Weaver. And then at the last one, this avatar. So this avatar is the last object, last key value pair here. And before the closing curly brace, right? So you can see that this one doesn't have any comma. So the reason being that this is the last object value. So whenever you have, so for instance, if you were to imagine you don't have this two, right? Or imagine this was if this was going to be the last value here, imagine we don't have this avatar here. If this was supposed to be the last value, there won't be, this comma will be missing. There won't be this comma there. And one other thing that you need to know, if I go back to my, if I go back to this diagram, so we have the objects starting here, we have the attributes, and we have all the, so we have the values, the key and the value, and then I've said to you, we have for numbers, there's no need for you to have any quotes in it. And then and there are some objects, there are some key value pairs where we have an array. So if you see any square bracket, it is an array. This is called an array. An array means that it's a list of objects with many values, right? So you find out that the first age has only one value, but hobbies has many values. So many values can be ascribed to these hobbies. So Netflix, mountain bike, and all that. So for instance, if you were to have an hobby with, let's say, represented by a number, you would have Netflix in quotes, comma, mountain biking in quotes, comma, 29 without the quote. So anywhere within a JSON object where you want to add a number, you don't have any quotes, you don't put any quotes in it, right? And then if you move down to these contact details, right, you see that we have, so just as we have in this first one, this is one curly bracket, the opening one, you would have so you have another value, another data object, JSON object, which is contact details. But within this contact details, right, we have another curly bracket inside. So this is what is called a nested object. is a nested object because it is an object within an object within an object, and it has another so many attributes as well. So you have phone name, phone number, we have email, blah, blah, blah. So this contact details is a nested object. These other ones, because it sits inside an object. So when you have it's like a child object. So it is called a nested object. So in as a recap, we have an object, we have key value pairs. The key could have a value with a string, with a number, or the value could be in an array. Yep, someone has a question. So who's that?
Yeah, so good evening. It's Nelly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I just observed something, when you say that string goes with the two quotation, by two quotation. I'm saying phone, and phone has a number. I just want to understand why you put two quotes, as in the first one, then in bracket 1, 2, 3, and the last one before comma. I'm talking of phone because it's a number, which means it's supposed to be an integer or maybe double. I don't know.
Yeah, because this is so if you look at this, right, because it has special characters in the phone number, to be honest, you can, so let's say if you take out this special, let's try this out 1 second. So the best way to understand this, if you go, all right, okay, you know what, I would quickly, what do I want to do next? Okay, you know what, let me just quickly do something, right, and then I will answer this question. I want to go into Postman quickly, then I would answer this question. So because I need to do it on Postman to tell you the reason why. Yeah. All right, so we'll come back to your question in a minute. All right, so I hope you guys have downloaded Postman because we spoke about Postman last week. If you have downloaded Postman, can you just signify in the chat if you with a yes? Let's just do that within 30 seconds. If you have downloaded Postman, can you just type yes? It doesn't look like anyone is downloaded Postman. Okay, that's fine. All right, so this is Postman. Postman is a tool that we use to test APIs. So if you download Postman afresh, it will ask you to sign in with to create an account. So by the way, to download Postman, all you need to do is okay, someone has downloaded Postman. So to download Postman, all you need, for those who don't know, I'll tell you now. To download Postman, all you need to do is go to just Google download Postman. Sorry, my Chrome. I have so many tabs open up in Chrome, so it's so bad. Let's use this one. So download Postman. All right, so if you go to this website, right? Yeah, it will ask you to just Google download Postman. Then it's going to ask you whether you have a Mac or whatever, select your Postman according to your operating system, right? So I think it automatically recognizes that on Mac. That's why I don't have the Windows option. So once you finish downloading Postman, you will have this interface. It gives you this nice interface that you can see on the screen. I hope you can see my screen right. So we just explore quickly. So the first thing is you have so it will give you something like this, an overview, blah blah blah. So you can create a request by clicking this. So when you click that, it gives you this address bar that you can add a URL to test an API. And then on this left side, we have all the CRUD verbs that we've spoken about with a lot more. So you have get, post, put, patch, delete, right? These are your code verbs, right? And then on this side, you have this blue button to send, your key, to send your request. You want to call something, and then, these are we spoke about APIs and their body and their request attributes, or I don't know, I can't remember what we call it in that slide. So you have your parameters. If you want to have a parameter, key value pairs. So, query parameters, I'll show you what a query parameter and how you can use this. We talked about, I don't know, have you spoken about authorization? So if you want to, so it's just like you logging into an account, you want to tell them who you are, so sometimes you need a token, like a bearer token. I'll show you what a bearer token looks like. But to be honest, API is very, very exhaustive. You can't learn everything on this course. You need to, this is an introduction. So everything that we are talking about, I'll write it down, I'll Google it, and then you expand on it. But I'll show you what a bearer token looks like. So you have different types of authorization as well. So the token is just something that would, say, okay, provide you, what a token is, right? Like all those code that they send to your phone when you want to send money on your account, all those passcodes and whatever. That's something like that. So there are different types of token as well. You have, all these ones, Akamai, AWS, all this stuff. You need to go and read about them. They're different, stuff. So you have your headers, right? So in your header, sometimes you pass your authorization in your header. So depending on how, to be honest, depending on how the API has been programmed to work, they might need some values in your headers. So I think last week we spoke about headers, to be honest. We spoke about, I think I spoke about what you would have in your headers. Yeah. So that is information to the server about the request, So we are talking about what, and, uh, so we're talking about the headers provide information to the request and all that. So you have your headers here, and I think I spoke about content type and all that. I can't remember. I think I spoke about content type too. I think I can't remember. Maybe I think yeah, okay. So you have your content type as well. So these are things that you put in your headers. So headers are information that you provide to the server, so that the host, the domain and port number. So it helps the server to understand. It's just like you are sending a request, and in that request, you need to provide certain information to be able to carry out that particular request. That's what your headers is, right? So you have, for instance, in your header, you might have, okay, what is the type of data that you are trying to send? Might be content type. So that's why you have content type, which might be application/JSON or application/XML. If you are sending a form, it might be something like I'll log into my account so that you can see properly. And then okay, so for the body as well, if you're sending a form data, for instance, it might ask you for some information, and you want to provide the values and the key and all that. So the key is that particular key, and the value is that information you're passing on. So you can also write tests in Postman as well, and you can also configure some settings and all that. And then here, if you want to develop uh, APIs, you can list all your APIs, it allows you to create an account and you can store APIs. If you want to configure environments, if you want to have mock servers. So mock servers are basically, they're not real APIs, but something they're dummy servers, dummy APIs. So if you want to, it gives you the functionality to create dummy APIs and, and work with. Monitor as well, and then everything you do gets stored in here. So to be honest, I think I will just log into and then so you can have, oh sorry, I don't want to log. So, and then one thing is that you can also do code as well. Let me just log into my account so that you can you'll be able to understand what I'm talking about. Oh, 1 second. Just hold on 1 second. I'll stop sharing. Just give me a second. Yeah, I'm still here. I'm trying to log on to my Postman. So just hold on. Okay. So it's taking a while to. Okay. So, but while it's taking a while, I'll just do something. Okay. So yeah, I hope I'm not confusing people. If you have questions, I think this is the best time to answer your question while I'm trying to get this working. Okay. Yep. So basically, if you go into your workspace, if you get to the landing page of Postman, if you go into your workspace, right? So if you have created any request previously, then it stores it in your workspace. So so if, for instance, because I've been using mine, I have all this history of things I've done previously. I'm trying to, okay, so which one have I done? Okay. So for instance, now this is an API that I was trying to test previously. This is the code verb that goes with it. And if I send this particular, so if you look at this, right, I was talking about headers. It says it's got 9 headers. It's still trying to load. There's so many, I've got so many requests, thousands of requests. That's why it's still trying to load. All right, so if I send this, right, yep, okay. So, okay, so I spoke about authorization. So authorization gives you access so this particular API does not require any authorization. So that's why it is blank. But some of them will require authorization. Okay, sorry. So if you look at these headers, right, it says hidden header. So this is what I'm talking about in terms of headers. So there are different values. You don't need to know all this, right? Some of them, once you go into, it's just like a cookie. Some of them, all you need to do. So if I take this particular API, right, and I put it here, oh, it's still okay. Okay, so I hide auto-generated headers. Okay, it's just like cookies, to be honest. So it automatically populates this for you once you go into an API. Once you send a request to an API. So what am I doing? Okay, right. Okay, because I haven't done something there. So let me just use this as an example. If I go to, before I use that as an example, I just do something. I'll answer your question early. Just hold on. If I go back to, if I go to this website, so All right. Okay. So this is it's asking me to log in. Why is it asking me to log in? Hold on. Sorry, I'm trying to. It's asking me to log in. I don't want to log in. Oh, this is okay. So this is this is what I was trying to open. So if you I actually send this to you. Let me put it in the chat for people to. You can go and play with this stuff. I'll put it in the chat for you guys. So that part, so it's a free it's an API where you can just play around with, right? So some of them require better authorization, but for instance, this GET request now. So this GET request is if you look at this GET requests, it returns you a value of all the airports. So if you just without even using Postman, right? If you just go into if you just put it here, right, and say and hit that, right? So can you see it gives you all the lists of all the airports, right? So even without using Postman, if it does the guest request automatically if you just hit it. So this goes to show you that most of the things that we do on the web pages, right, they're actually APIs at the back of them. So clicking a button or doing something actually does something for you. So, but if you now go back to Postman and go and look at that particular go and do a GET request on that particular thing, right? It gives you a JSON object. It returns a JSON values. So can you see? So it's the same thing. So, but what I've done on Chrome is exactly the same thing that Postman is doing for me as well. But Postman does it in a nice and structured way. It returns the object values back in a nice and structured way, right? So now going back to the question from Nelly, right? So if you, as you just said, as a digression, if you look at this value, Nelly, are you there? Yeah, you can see that this longitude, right?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. So it takes this longitude. It should take a value for an integer, but because we have a special character in between, so a dot, right? So so the best way for me to do this is copy this, copy this JSON value and do something. Let me show you. So if I go here and I come to body, I just want to explain. I hope I'm not confusing people because I just want to explain something to her quickly. So if I go for raw and I change it to, so by the way, you can, if I change it to JSON, right? And you should give me JSON, whatever. So if I change this one, if I take out the dot, right, you should complain. Can you see that it's complaining? Can you see this red is
Yeah,
complaining?
that's it. Okay.
But if I put it's actually complaining or something else as well. I need a curly bracket as well. I need another curly bracket.
Yeah, I think one is missing.
Yeah, at the bottom. Yeah. So if I take this out, right? No, it's not complaining. But for actual values, for you to actually represent
An
okay,
integer.
an integer. So one thing that you need to understand is that when you are represent, so this is an integer in a string format. So this particular API, yeah, this particular response brings out an integer, but as a string. So what if you are representing an integer, yeah, if you are representing an integer, yeah, an integer does not have this quote, right? But for this particular response, right, they are returning the value of this longitude as a string. So one thing that you need to understand is that when you are returning an integer as a string, you have the quotes, right? But normally, an integer is represented without this quote.
Okay.
So sorry, go on.
I said I think I get you what you're saying.
Yeah, so it looks like this particular API, the response the response, the value for longitude is passed as a string. So it is numbers but passed as a string. So for people that are new, that don't really understand what we are talking about, what we are saying is that if you are passing key value pairs in a JSON object, right? Just know that when you are passing numbers, you don't put a string like this. No, sorry. You don't put a string. When you're passing numbers, you don't put a string. Yeah. So can you see that it's still all the compilation errors, that error is still not showing any error if I take it back as it. Can you see this? So can you see that this altitude, I haven't touched the altitude. That one is passed as a number, as an integer. But this particular longitude, right, is passed as a string. So it depends on how the developer has configured the API to take a particular value as. Sometimes it might be a string value or it might be a number. If it's an integer, it's mostly going to be a number value. But if the number value is given, it's not working with the number value, try that number as a string, which is when you had your quotes and all that. So yeah, so. And the one thing that you need to understand is that the stuff I showed you guys here, most international numbers are represented like this. They have these curly brackets. So if you have this curly bracket, so if I was to go back to Postman and take this out and add quotes and closing and opening brackets, yeah, can you see that it's going to give me error? So the only way I can overcome that. So for people that are not following us, you can see that I have this error because I put this opening and closing brackets, right? But if I add the quotes, yeah, the quotes takes away the error. Can you see?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so that's that for yeah. So going back to Postman, right? That was just the digression. So we are doing a GET request. A GET request does not have a body. None. It doesn't have a body. So the same thing I did on Chrome is the same thing I have here. So it has returned me. If you look at this, right, it has returned me all the airports /airports, right? So if I was to get this particular airport, if I wanted to get this particular airport with this ID, so this API allows me to add a path and add the airport ID. So it will return that particular airport. Yeah, it's returning only one value for me, right? So when you're testing API, you need to look at, there are so many things that you need to just try and you need to ask your developer. So that's that. And when you are doing a post request, so if you're going back to, let's open another one. So this is a fresh one. So when you are doing a post request, right? A post request, we need a body. So an example of, I have an example here that I want to, okay. So if you look at this particular example of this API, yeah, this is another API. This API is to log in. So let's say that, so basically, to be honest, if you have the login API to Facebook, right? If you know the path, if you look at the body, right, I have added, because I'm doing a post request, I have my username and my password, right? So if I log in, if I send this request, what I need to get is a token value. It gives me, so this particular, it gives me access to my account, basically, and I get a 200. So this is how you would put a body. So depending on how the API has been configured, so one thing that you need to know is that if they give you an API, let's say you're a tester, you're working, they give you this API to test, this login to test, and you know that you are testing a login. If you're logging into something, you would have a body. You'll be sending some information as a body to give you authorization to test that particular API. You need to ask your developer now, all right, so does it take a text body, a JSON body, or JavaScript or HTML? What kind of body format does that particular API takes? So that is what will make you to decide on your Postman, whether you need to select it as a text, select it as a JavaScript, or select it as a JSON or XML. Yeah. So that is what we'll So if going back to and then test as well. So I don't think this one doesn't have any test. You can write test in Postman. You can send query parameters. So for instance, let's try something out. Let's see if it's going to work. Where is that one? That one. Okay, this gets right. We did a get one. Okay, so let's say we want to get a single airport. So this API gives us all the airports that we know. You can see that there are hundreds or thousands of them or whatever. So let's say we want to get one particular airport and we want to use the ID. Yeah. So we know that this ID has a value. So if you look, I hope you guys can see my screen. Can somebody just say yes if they can see what I've highlighted?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Good. Now, so let's say we want to get this particular GKA, yeah? You only want to return the value. So one thing that we can do is we can either, let me take this out. Okay, so let's put this, get. So I'll go to this one, copy this one, put it there. But we want to retrieve, we're now retrieving a value, we are retrieving a value. And then I can come to this parameter and say, okay, my ID and is it GKA or something? Is it GKA? So my ID is GKA. So can you see that automatically when I entered that value, it added something. So if I delete this, right? Yeah, and if I delete this, or if I take this out, can you see that can you see that it's doing something up here? So if I add this back, right, and I say ID, yeah, and I say is it GKA, yeah, and I click send, you see that it has returned, it's even giving me so many things, but in the ideal fact, it should actually give me this GKA only. So let's try out again. So it's giving me JK. If I do it this way, it's giving me JK. But what I'm trying to say to you is that you can add your query parameters here. So let me take this out. So if you come back to your key value pair, if you had ID value with. So if, for instance, this particular, so the reason why it's not working, why it wasn't working was because this particular API does not work with this value. It doesn't work with this value, right? It doesn't work like your query doesn't work like this. That's why it doesn't. That's why it's bringing out that whatever. It's bringing out everything else. So if it was a real API, as in a real, this one is a dummy API, a play API. If it was a real API, what you're basically saying is that you want some, give me this airport where the ID is JKA, then it should return that value for you. You can see that it's giving us 200, but it's actually giving us a lot more rubbish. But if you're in a if you see this in a work environment, you need to speak to your you need to speak to your developer and say, you know what, this is a bug because this is returning other values. Yeah, go on.
Please, what's the difference between endpoint and parameters?
So parameters are query. So so this is your endpoint, right? So this is your endpoint. This API, whatever, is your endpoint. So if you look at what I explained to you earlier, right? So this is your endpoint. To be honest, if you look at everything, to be honest, including that JKA, including /GKA, yeah, is your endpoint because it is where your resource, a particular resource, is sitting. So everything from this API to this JKA is your endpoint because it's a location of a particular resource, and that particular resource that we are looking at is this value, this airport data that has an ID of JKA. So this is a resource, right? So a resource is also your endpoint.
Oh.
Well, your endpoints, yeah. So your endpoints is where your resource is located. If you, I don't know whether you joined the class from the beginning.
No, I wasn't in the class.
Yeah, so you have your endpoints, and within your endpoints, you have your resource. You can have many resources.
Okay.
You can have, so that's why I explained it with this pizza man, right? Yeah. So within this particular endpoint, we have orders, capital orders, many orders, customer names, addresses, payments, and then for the back end your menu will have different pizzas, different pizza size, small, large, medium, extra large, toppings, pepperoni, margarita, onions, sauce, tomato, cheese, ketchup. That is that's your resource. These are your resources, where your
So
resource
these are
sits.
query parameters.
So no. This is not query parameter. I'm talking about resources. Resources, right? So your endpoint contains your resource. That's where your resource sits. So your endpoint is like a home where your resource, you are storing your resource somewhere, and that's where your endpoint is.
Okay.
Okay, but so your query parameters now, so now query a particular resource within your endpoint, you need to use query parameters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's another, and I think I have another example here. So if we go to, if I go here and I say, okay, give me all the airports in Canada. So if I do some, let's try, and I want to do something, country. Let me see if I can add country. I want to see whether it's going to work, country, and then let's see the value is Canada. I expect that it will give me something, some junk. Okay, so it does. So this part. So can you say that this, as I don't even, if you are confused, that if you're working on a real endpoint, this is a dummy one, right? A dummy one. It's not, a dummy is not real, right? But if you're working on a real endpoint, right? When you are saying give me, when you are using the query parameter and you are typing in these values, I'm saying that, okay, this particular endpoint, right? Yeah, give me all the airports in the country called Canada. It's returning, can you say that is because it's a fake one, it's returning Papua New Guinea, Papua New Guinea, Papua New Guinea, Papua New Guinea, yeah? But so that means that these endpoints has not, they haven't really worked on it to do the right thing. So the only other option is if I take out this comma and say, let's, okay, no, and put the equals, right? It's even saying not found. Okay. Yeah, it's not showing, it's not giving me country / Canada. Hold on. Airports. I'm trying to country, Canada. So country / country postcode. Okay. So yeah, okay. So no, so it doesn't filter it out anyway, because I can still see wait, I can still see, so if I type country. So yeah, you see, it doesn't filter it out. So because it's a dummy website, it's not giving us accurate results. But to be honest, if you follow my example, right? If it is an actual, a real endpoint, right? If you put in your query parameters, whatever you put in here as a query parameter, it should work. It should work and give you what your values are, what the values are. So just like we've done it, country, or let's say ID, ID is JKA or whatever. So ID is JKA. So the same thing. So let's assume this is working. Let's assume this is actually working, gives us JKA. You can also say, okay, you want airport. You can also filter by maybe for another filter, another query parameter. Name is Goroka Airport or something. Yeah, so, but I don't know. So, but you can see that when you add your query parameter here, you automatically adds, the query string to your URL. So that's one thing. And then moving forward quickly, if you look at your I've shown you the body. I haven't shown you authorization. Okay. If you look at if you look at, let me just if you look at this one, if you look at this response, we get 200. If you are looking for, if you make a mistake or look for something that doesn't exist in your endpoints, if you are looking for a resource that doesn't exist, like airports, Goroka airports, you can see the typo in my URL. If I click send, then if it's, yeah, you see, it's a dummy website. Let's just try and make it not work. All right, so if you're looking for something that doesn't exist, right, it will say 404 not found. So if you look from last week, we spoke about error codes, like, so if something is wrong and, so for instance, this is a user error because I typed the wrong names here, right? And that's why I get a 404. So this is your response code. If I do it the right way, you should give me 200. Still not coming up. But whatever, so success is 200. Success is 200. Success is 200. So this is where you have your response code, and then it tells you the time taken to complete the response, the size of the response size. And if you look at if you have some test results, if you've written some tests, you have your test results here. If you, then this is what they call the response headers, and there are also keys and values, everything is more like key value pairs. This is cookies, if you have cookies, this is no cookies, and this is the body. This is the body. So to be honest, what I'll say to you is you can play around and with this one, and if you want to export it to code, you have different programming languages. If you want to export it into Java, it gives you a nice code. So just click on, if I close this, right, just click on this code, this thing, right, this thing here. If you click on that, it gives you a different, if you want it in C#, if you want it in Node.js, anything, Node.js, it helps you write, it gives you a clean code, you automatically, everything you're doing manually, it converts it into a code for you. So you can actually copy this into your IDE, run it, and then, and that's it, right? So has anyone got a question? I think we just call it a day. There's a lot to show you, but I have posted in the chat that particular endpoints. Go and download Postman and just play around with it, to be honest. Play around with it. From next week, we might start, we'll start doing some, so we'll start going deeper. We'll write some basic steps, basic tests in Postman, and yeah, and see how that goes and all that. Well, has anyone got any questions, please?
Like now, workspaces, and he wants to create because when I Google it, I understand that it's basically for, let's assume group wants to create a project, as in they want like to store their project in the workspace. So I was like trying to create it, but I couldn't get it. So I'm just asking to know if you know how to do it. The workspace is up there.
No, no, all right. So when you download Postman and get to your landing page, right? Yeah, just click on send a request.
Okay.
And then it opens up the workspace for you. So workspace is basically it's just it's just your space, it's just a folder where you have all your work. You know, it's just a directory. You know when you have you know what's called a directory. You know inside a directory you might have folders, subfolders, you know, that is basically what it is. And what they are trying to do is that workspace as well, can you see, is telling me that enter a request. So it will actually also tell you, you know, so once you click send a request, it's going to give you like a, you know, like when you buy a new phone, it gives you a quick overview of how you can do things. So it's like a self start lesson or whatever. So it gives you that. So but me, I don't need it. So if you click that, you know, so one of it, what you're also trying to say is that your workspace, you can also collaborate with other developers.
Yes, you know, because I'm seeing it as a kind of repository whereby, like or GitHub, a kind of whereby you store your project for other people to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can collaborate and all that. So, and then another thing is that you can also run tests, you know, collection of tests. I think I have, you can also run collection of tests. If I go to my history, so you can, you know, if you have hundreds or thousands of tests, you know, rather than running them one by one, you can run a collection. So if I do I don't know, not that. I did one recently, so I'm only showing you this so that you can understand. Okay, so this is a collection so that you guys can understand. So like this one now, right? I'm running 3 things at the same time or 4 things at the same time, right? So, you know, I'm getting a token. I'm using that token to retrieve information. I'm using that token to post something, create a new post, you know, and then I'm writing some tests and I'm also going through some tests there. So, and then so you can use this to run hundreds of, you know, on hundreds of tests and all that. And then you can also, if you click your runner, you can also select the file. Postman also gives you the option to select the file. So if you have loads of file, if you have, let's say you want to run tests for thousands of records, you know, you can then select a CSV file or an Excel file, and then use that. Is a CSV file. It makes use of a CSV file, and then I'll show you. I think I have an example which I'll try and show you guys, maybe next week or the week after. You can use that to run thousands of tests. So maybe for instance, you know, this maybe where you are trying to create a new resource. So, but you want to iterate over it like 100 times. So rather than clicking this 1, 2, 3, 4, clicking send up to 100 times, you can just load a file. That file will just, within 1 minute, that file will create those 100 resources for you. So you know, so to be honest, so the reason I'm trying to explain all this is because if people are scared of writing code, doing automation, you can also do manual testing in Postman. Postman also gets to a level where you now start writing tests. So you see, this is an example of tests that you can write in Postman. This is JavaScript, you know, and then and one thing I need to tell you before I go is also that Postman gives you snippets of code, right? When I mean snippets of code, so if you come here, if you look at this particular site, there are snippets of code that you can. So if you want to assert that your status code is 200, so if I run this one, okay, this gives me a 200, right? If I want to assert that it's 200, I can run. You can see that my test result, my test is passing 200. So let's say I change this to 400, and I click send. You see that it will fail. So can you see it fail? I expected 200, but go a 400. Yeah. So just, so I've sent you guys, let me send it again so that for people that are following us, I'll send it. So if you are, this is that first link is the first link. First link is to the web page. Second link is to get all the airports. Yeah. So if you go and replicate what we've done tonight, at least it gives you a starting point for people that haven't used it before. The starting point into Postman, and then we can answer questions next week. So any other questions as we round up now? There are 19 people on this call, but only Nelly has been talking. So all right, okay. No worries. I assume that people understand what we've spoken about, what we've taught this evening. And sorry that it's a bit haphazard, but at least we've been able to pass. At least someone has been asking questions, so we want to pass some knowledge to people. All right, goodbye. See you next week.
Okay. Good night.
Thank you.